Something that gets thrown around a lot when talking about the Monogatari series is the idea of an unreliable narrator. When a story is narrated from a first-person perspective, we as the audience can only see what our narrator sees, which may not be the truth. Or, in other cases, our narrator may be lying to us entirely. The Monogatari series is a story about lies, deceit, self-deceit, and how someone's perspective can shape the world around them. In this video, I won't be doing too much analysis, that really isn't my forte, but I'll just be talking about how each of our narrators view the world differently, and how that affects how we as the audience see it. As a side note, I'll only be talking about the narrators in the anime, those being Koyomi Aradagi, Tsubasa Hanekawa, Suruga Kanbaru, Nariko Sengoku, and Kaiki Deshu. I am in the process of reading the novels, but I haven't gotten to Sadachi Fiasco or Acerola Bon Appetit, so I haven't seen Sadachi's or Deathtopia's perspectives yet. Well, to start things off, let's talk about our beloved main character, Koyomi Aradagi. We see through his perspective for the majority of the series, so a lot of our knowledge about it is in actuality his knowledge. While he does try to explain what he sees, after the incident with Sadachi, he becomes rather distant, uninterested in what's going on around him. It often seems like Aradagi doesn't have much memory of his past, and that in part may be a result of his past with Sadachi. He wants to block that out, and thus forgets it. He doesn't want to see it, so he simply doesn't. Building off that, though, Aradagi only pays attention to what he wants to see. Everything else gets filtered out. That's part of why there are no extras in the Monogatari series. They aren't important to Aradagi's story, so in his mind they aren't even there, while in arcs like Nadeko Medusa there are at least silhouettes of people. I think I'll mention Kanbaru next, since, in terms of the unreliability of our narrators, she is probably the least interesting. I've sat here for a while thinking about what might make her unreliable, but there really isn't much compared to the others. She's the kind of girl who calls things as she sees them, at least to herself. The only things I can really think of is how she perceives Numachi's ghost, and how her feelings towards Senjigahara may have warped her perspective towards Aradagi, but that's about it. I guess while I'm here, I'd like to mention that, when she was talking to Aradagi in the end of the Hana Monogatari anime, she seemed a little meaner, while in the novel she seemed more in love with him, at least to me, but that doesn't have much to do with today's topic. Next up on our list is Miss Tsubasa Hanekawa. Like Kanbaru, there isn't quite as much on Hanekawa for this topic, but it's still very interesting to see her perspective on life and on the world. She was raised in a broken home with no parental bond to the people she called her mother and father, and she just wanted to be normal, transforming into something entirely not normal in the process. Her narration in Neko Monogatari Shiro does an amazing job of showing her coming to terms with herself, realizing that everything isn't her fault and that she doesn't have to put herself on the line just to help others. There are a few inconsistencies, however, in her story, which helps to fuel the idea that Kako is just a manifestation of Hanekawa's mind and broken psyche. While he may be a liar, our best girl is the most open about the fact that his narration is unreliable. Kaiki Deshu, the narrator of Koi Monogatari, made it clear from the start that he may be lying to the viewer, that you should always take things with a grain of salt. It makes it difficult to decipher what's true and what isn't. There are a few things we do know for certain that happened, that he managed to deceive and save Nadeko, as we see her in later arcs, mostly back to normal, and mentioning it, but there are also some things we know aren't true in some capacity, like the fact that Kaiki supposedly died at the end of Koi, but we see him alive and well in Hana Monogatari, which takes place later. Not knowing whether we're being told the truth is truly the mark of an unreliable narrator. Now we move on to our final narrator, the one who's probably the most interesting of the bunch, Nariko Sengoku. The case of Nariko Sengoku and her unreliable narration is similar to the description of the Sawari Neko we get in Neko Monogatari Kuro. A person is supposedly possessed by the spirit of the cat and acts wildly and differently, but in the end it's revealed the person was never possessed at all. The same could be said with Nariko. She was forced to help the spirit of a snake god, Kuchinawa, find his body, but in the end it was revealed there was never any spirit in the first place. Nadeko is unstable, and she wove this whole narrative in her head to make herself seem like the victim. She hates herself and so deceives herself, fabricating this tale to justify herself. She even went so far as to block out parts of her memory to help push forward her narrative, creating plot holes for herself in the process that she simply chose to ignore. The Nadeko Medusa arc is an arc built on lies, delusions, and self-deceit, with Nadeko's unreliable narration being at the center of it all. Well, there was just my excuse to ramble on about something I love about the Monogatari series. It might not have made much sense, but I at least had some fun with it, and I hope you did too. If you did, feel free to like or comment, or even subscribe if you're feeling daring. I've been your host, Gavin here at Itagi's Table, and I'll see y'all some other time.